And here we go. And now we are live. Welcome everyone to the first Landing Internships and Jobs AMA of the BEAMathon. I'm really excited to have you guys here just to learn more about nailing interviews, how to write your resumes, and things like that. And before we actually get started, we have an immediate prize opportunity at the beginning right here. So if you want to win some merchandise, things like stickers, like these, I actually threw some during the prize ceremony, well, during the opening ceremony, during the prize part of it. Feel free to just take a picture of you in this workshop. You could say, hey, I'm at the Landing Internships and Jobs AMA at the BEAMathon, and then just tag Beam Community on Instagram before 4:50 p.m. Eastern Time, and we'll pick who will be the winners for this session. So without further ado, we're just going to go down the line and have the speakers introduce themselves. So I'll just call on the speakers in this next slide, and we'll just have them introduce maybe what school they go to, where they work, or where they intern at, and just anything else they want to know or whatever they're excited for during this workshop. So we can have Siddharth, if you want to unmute and turn on your camera if you haven't already, I think, yeah, I see you.
Yeah. Hey everyone, yeah, I'm Siddharth, you can call me Sid. I go to Berkeley MET, and I'm currently working with Solonis on their process mining consulting. So that's essentially the data science and ML team. But yeah, glad to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, now we can have Madison introduce herself.
Hi guys, I'm Madison. I'm 17. I go to Brick Township High School, and I interned for NASA last summer. I'm really excited to meet you all and answer any questions.
Awesome. Yeah, now we can have Calix introduce himself.
Hey everyone, I'm Calix. I'm a high school junior and I'm a software engineering intern at Hack Plus, and I'm currently working on their backend team.
Awesome. And we can have Kaylee introduce herself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kaylee. I'm a sophomore at Stanford University, and I'm going to be interning at Tesla in the spring and Microsoft in the summer.
Awesome. And now we can have our last speaker, Smithy, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, my name is Smitty. I'm a junior at Duke studying financial economics. I have experience in private equity, and I'll be going into investment banking in New York this summer.
Awesome. Yeah, so now that all of the panelists have introduced themselves, just feel free within this chat to start asking questions about anything related to landing internships, jobs, and things like that. I'm going to unshare my screen, and while you guys are thinking of different questions to ask our panelists, I'm just going to go through different questions that we've actually had in our Beam Slack. So for the speakers, whenever you want to answer questions, just feel free to use the raise hand feature so that I can just leave the floor to you. So the first question is, what advice do you have for nailing an interview? Because most of these very competitive internships and jobs have an interview process. Do any of you guys want to answer this question and raise your hand about your interview process or any tips that you have related to interviews? So feel free to raise your hand, any one of the speakers. Do you guys have any tips for nailing interviews and stuff like that? Because I know they can be very nerve-wracking at times. Any thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. I can go. So yeah, basically, it varies from what I understand from obviously profession to profession. Definitely, if you want to nail an interview, I would always suggest looking at a book that's related to your sort of sector. I know there's someone here who's doing investment banking. I think she might be able to answer a little bit more about sort of, that aspect. But, from what I understand, consulting and process mining consulting, you need to understand case studies and sort of be analytical. One thing I would suggest a lot about, especially when it comes to consulting, understanding technology, over prepare in some ways. There's always a good way to sort of, approach different things. And I think if you over prepare by looking at sort of what does the company do, there are plenty of forums. Reddit is full of it with sort of past interview questions that you can just start sort of sifting through. But yeah, I would look at sort of what is there in your sector, that you're focusing on or trying to intern for, and start really learning more, whether it's in the real world, what's happening in the current event side, and then a little bit more on the analytical side. But that's just sort of for the tech consulting aspect.
Yeah, perfect. And Kayla, if you want to go and give your insights as well.
Yeah, for sure. So definitely would agree with Sid on making sure you're prepping for your specific sector. I'm personally in the realm of like product management, so I looked at books like Cracking the Product Management Interview. Going off of that, I would also, for me personally, whenever I have a job interview, I create like this kind of document with answers to common questions like, why are you interested in this job, or why are you interested in this specific like company or role? Tell me a little bit about yourself. So those are kind of all like common questions that you can find on the internet, on online resources, stuff like that. And then I would also prep some like bullet points about the company and the role itself. So why are you prepared for this specific role? And also deep research on the company. I always prepare kind of like deeper questions to ask at the end of an interview that shows like genuine interest, that shows that you're really actually excited about that company, especially if you're cold emailing to a specific company. You really want to make sure that they know that you've done your research on that company. So definitely would recommend that. So just, yeah, I would say going beyond that surface level of asking like, oh, what's the company culture like here? Maybe something instead, like twisting that around to say, oh, I read this article about this recent news about your company. Can you tell me a little bit more about like XYZ? Just showing that you've really done your research in general.
Yeah, thank you so much for those awesome tips. So we can go on to the next question. Let's look through the chat. Oh my God, you guys are flooding with lots of questions. Great to hear. So one question that Selena has is, what are some essentials to put on your resume or application? So I believe those are like two separate things. So you have like a resume, and maybe sometimes there's application questions depending on what the internship is. So do you guys want to like raise your hand for answering this question about like any tips, like what did you guys put on your resume, or like any tips and tricks for the people here who are applying to internships with a resume? Yeah, Smitty, if you want to go.
Sure. So I think with the resume, every application that you submit, your resume should be tailored differently, and you should include certain keywords and buzzwords. So you don't have to have completely different experiences, but phrasing them in a way where if you look at any application, they'll have keywords that they're looking for, and put those words within the application, because oftentimes they'll have algorithms that go through these tons of resumes, and if your application is dinged because they have those words, you'll be pulled aside and be more likely to be called for an interview. And aside from that, there's so many resources online, great resources. If you do, go to an institution, they'll normally have a career center as well that can point you in a very good direction and give you examples of older resumes.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for sharing that. Siddharth, you can go and give some tips.
Yeah, absolutely. Smitty hit it out of the park. She was, right on the nail with it, obviously. But I think one thing that's there, obviously, continuing off that aspect of looking for specific keywords that you're looking in with sort of your resume. Lots of these companies, whether it's in high school or college, they want to see some certain like actual courses that you've taken. For example, if you are going for a more of a software engineering role at some like big tech company, for example, I'm just throwing something out as an example, they would want to see that you know some data structures. So that is, something that's heavily, I guess, required and recommended. So when you are writing what courses you have taken on your resume, make sure to include this. Just want to make sure and keep this, let you know that there's actually something that's illegal that's done, and the companies have blacklisted this. Do not basically what people would do is they would take these certain keywords that these companies look for, put it in their resume, make the font completely white and invisible. And that's how they would get separated from that pool and get those dings and be separated. You will be blacklisted if you ever do that, so never do that. Keep that in mind. Always be frank and 100% honest. Obviously, there's a little bit sort of exaggerating with the resumes, but there's a very fine line between making yourself look good and outright lying. So just definitely be careful with what you put there and sort of what you are trying to exemplify to employers.
Yeah, definitely agree. Thank you so much for sharing those points. So there's a lot of like high school students in this Zoom. So, and there's also a question from, let's see, Kennedy, that as a high school senior, how do you become a strong candidate for an internship? So this can actually apply for high school students in general. I know Madison did an internship at NASA. I know Calix is a high school student as well, doing lots of internships I've seen you do. And wondering if you guys have any tips related to finding internships, even if you're not in college yet. So yeah, feel free, Madison, to give some tips on that.
So for finding internships when you're not a college student, I'd look towards more government facilities. I know NASA, a lot of the local governments will offer more internships to high school students than, say, private companies like Microsoft. But in making yourself more marketable towards them, I would show that you have a variety of skills. I know a lot of people build their resumes in one specific sector, but what I found is that a lot of the younger applicants get more success when they're showing a plethora of skills ranging from STEM to law to, reading, writing, public speaking.
Yeah, that sounds really awesome. And Calix, if you want to give some tips as well.
Yeah, so for me, I actually, I'm not exactly sure how other high school students who have internships found them. I didn't do any cold emailing. I didn't try and look for very niche internships. I actually just went straight through job sites. So I went through Indeed and I went through Glassdoor, and so I applied alongside everyone else. And so most of the other candidates that I was interviewing next to were college students as well, which means that I also intern alongside a lot of college students. So it's like I really did apply to as many internships as I could. And all of those internships also still required you to be in college or something like that. I didn't do any lying on my resume. It really just took like a lot of applying for me to get like at least 1 or 2 interviews. And then I just had to nail those interviews, and then it went pretty well. So like I haven't been able to get any opportunities at like big tech companies because I'm not a college student, so it's a little bit harder there. But I started off with internships at very small companies that you could even consider like, is that really an internship? You're not sure. But after I got that earlier experience, it was easier to get internships at a little bit more reputable organizations.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Thank you so much for the advice. So just kind of going along why you guys decided to intern or work at the certain companies you're working at right now, how do you actually judge whether or not a company is credible and whether or not you'd actually be a good fit for the company in general? Because maybe you guys apply to multiple internships or jobs and things like that. Just wondering if you guys have any tips on deciding which companies to reach out to or apply to, or deciding which companies are credible even for maybe not even top companies, or yeah, just in general, like any tips relating to that. So yeah, Smitty, if you wanted to give some tips.
Sure. So I think there's 2 sides to this question. One is whether a company is credible or not, and the other is getting a feel for the company culture. So speaking to the first part, it has a lot to do with intuition, and I raise my hand because I've been there. I've applied to a company that ended up not even being a real company, which is quite disappointing, but you can tell just by, I think, the way people reach out to you. Their online presence is a big thing. We're in the age of Google. So, do they have a website? Do they have social media that's active? Do the people listed on the LinkedIn that work there, have they had previous experiences in somewhat reputable companies? And then the other part is the culture. And again, that's a very intuition thing. You'll feel it a lot through the interview process. When when you're interviewing, a great place to judge the culture is when at the end they ask you whether you have any questions or not. So really think about the questions that you want to prepare and think about your work style and see if you can phrase any questions to gauge the work style of the company.
Yeah, those are some really awesome tips. Thanks so much. Siddharth, you can go ahead and yeah, feel free to give some advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick. So I think Victory has his hand up, so I'm just going to go real quick. But yeah, once again, Smitty hit it out of the park. But yeah, I think one thing that's also there with, Celonis, for example, is a sort of, you may have not heard of it too much, but essentially they're pretty big in the enterprise space, and especially with consulting. So one thing that you're going to be looking at when you look at consulting companies, especially tech consulting, look at their clients, look at who they're roping in, especially at early stage. Celonis isn't a public company. They're unicorning right now, so they're highly valued. Just finished a 290 million Series C. They're doing great, and I love them. And look at the clients. I mean, they're working with IBM, working with Coke, working with all these big growth companies and sort of value companies. You can say a lot about what they're really providing for not only the companies externally but also internally. So keep in mind and pay attention to the news where lots of these companies are paying being sort of key players. But yeah, I think Victory, go ahead, man.
This is a question for everyone, even though Smithy's the one that like gave me the question in the first place, but what are some questions that have given you an insight into office culture? Because she kind of like glazed over it, but I really want to go in detail with that.
I can respond to that then, if you'd like. So, for example, in banking, work-life balance is there's a huge issue because you're in the office working 80 hours a week minimum. So I like to ask, when do you usually get out of the office and what do you like to do when you're outside of the office? To gauge, or do they have time to develop hobbies outside, or is work consuming everything? Or when you're in the office, who do you grab lunch with? Is there like a team lunch culture? Do you guys like to go out to lunch together, or do you have to eat at your desk and work through lunch? Those are just some off the top of my head, but stuff like that.
Yeah, that's some really great advice. Yeah, Victory, did you have any other questions, or that pretty much covered it?
I had one earlier in the chat, but I'm not sure if it got carried away with the literal flood of messages going on right now. So I'm just going to say, personally, I'm going more into the communication sector in terms of being a content creator and creating digital media. So what I wanted to say was, how have you guys managed to find your scholarships? Because I know none of you here are in that sector, but I know that's super helpful in terms of that. Do you have any recommendations? Things like that.
I might not be able to answer sort of, I know, production media, I'm not too familiar with it, but one thing that's there, and I believe you're asking a question about sort of scholarships, I believe?
More internships.
Internships, I'm so sorry if I heard that wrong, I don't know why. But yeah, I think one thing that's out there is that, there are a bunch of content creators that, are super starting out. And, one thing you can look at is, I don't know if anyone here is on Clubhouse, but there are tons of, people that are, I'm sure, I'm seeing lots of smiles here. So I'm sure Clubhouse is a big craze here. But yeah, I would say, there are tons of people on Twitter, reach out to them, because that's one thing that I've seen a lot of, is that lots of connections are formed on Twitter, and sort of DMing them, you just say, hey, I'm Victory, and I'm super interested in what you're, building, and what, I love your content. I was wondering if I could learn to gain experience, and, wanted to see if I could really, get my opportunity to learn more. And, if they're, around our age, they're going to be more than happy, because they were in the same position, a few years ago or a few months ago. And, if they're older, you might have to do a little bit more of sort of convincing, but it's definitely, worth a try. So try different streams. Twitter is there, TikTok for sure. The list goes on and on. But yeah, I hope that helped.
I just really quickly said, I think, you really answered the question. I wanted to say something because I work as a content creator right now. It's like a part-time job in school. Video editing is something that I really enjoy, in camera work. So if you do go to college, or even, I don't know if you're in high school or not, but see if there's opportunities within your university. Are there sports teams where you can film and edit the games and publish them? So try and be creative and think of stuff you can do right now with whatever sphere you're in, to build up some experience.
It's funny you say that, because I literally just hosted an event for my school last week.
Look at that. Small world. Yeah, thanks so much for the advice. Kaylee, I don't know if you were raising your hand before related to like the questions to ask. Oh no, you're good, you're good. Okay, so there's another question in the chat. I think we should definitely address this as well. I know in interviews, like I definitely get nervous for interviews, whether it be like just in organizations or for college interviews in general, some internship interviews. So what should you do if you've ever had an interview and like had a lot of anxiety? How do you tell yourself to relax in that moment? Like, is there any practices that you do like during the interview or before the interview or even after, just to calm yourself down? So yeah, we can go with Kaylee.
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely been in this situation a ton before. It's really scary talking to an adult. I would say, first of all, it's completely normal. It's really scary to have someone like judging you and feeling like you're being evaluated. But for me, like some tips that I would have, one, join like the call like 5 minutes early, because right when I join the call or like the interview, or I guess like if it's in person, then maybe like show up a little earlier, but in Zoom, I like to join the call a little bit early, because that that kind of relieves my nerves a little bit, because right when I join the call, I get like really nervous. So that relieves it a little bit. Two, thinking of it more as a conversation than an interview. Sometimes I like to think of it being like going back and forth, asking questions to them as well. That makes it a little bit more relaxed and not so much like, oh, I'm being judged and evaluated. And then three, I think just like practice makes perfect. I practiced answering questions in the mirror. I practiced with my parents. I just practiced like around the house sometimes. I just feel like walking down the stairs and telling myself about why I'm a great candidate, stuff like that. So, and I think with practice comes confidence. So if you practice more confidence. So those are some tips.
Yeah, thank you so much for the amazing tips. We can go with Madison, and you can share some of your tips for that as well.
Yeah, I think Kaylee hit it right on the head. You need to practice whatever you think you're going to be saying. There's a lot of questions that interviews use over and over. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Why would you be a good fit for this company? You know they're going to ask those questions, so you should have some sort of response already formulated in your head. And I think it's also important to remember that whoever's interviewing you wants you to do good. They're looking for great candidates. And if you're getting too nervous or flustered, you just need to remember that they want you to be an awesome candidate because that makes their job so much easier.
Yeah, for sure. You definitely gave amazing advice right there. So another question that Kennedy had is, should I start a LinkedIn profile now to stand out? And how do you think people should actually approach using LinkedIn? Because I know there's some people who make a profile but don't know really what to do next. People say, how do you network on LinkedIn? Or how do you reach out to recruiters or people who work at companies that you are interested in? So what's your approach or any tips for using LinkedIn? Yeah, Siddharth, you can go ahead.
Oh my God, yeah, this is a super important question. Make the LinkedIn profile. Just make the LinkedIn profile. I like give you 2 thumbs up. You got to make it because lots of interviews, lots of interviews. The recruiters, especially in this virtual world, it's picking up. This is the number one question they're going to ask you. Take me through your LinkedIn profile, and then they're going to have your LinkedIn profile up on the computer or phone that they have next to them, the recruiters, and they're going to be asking you questions. Oh, what was this experience? What was that experience? And the better that you shape your experience, make sure you have, they have different segments, I believe, on LinkedIn. So like, there's like a publication, projects, awards, and, all these different sort of experiences. Make it sort of LinkedIn. And yeah, if you're a high school student and you don't really, we're not expecting you to, you're like, oh, I have Morgan Stanley on my LinkedIn as a high school student, and obviously, we understand that, and I'm sure recruiters understand that, you're starting off, your students, but you're highly accomplished students that, can show that you can work no matter what. So show what experiences that you can have on your experiences, and make sure that you craft it like it tells a story that, hey, this is what I did here. This is what I learned here. And this is sort of the skills that I have. Make sure you also update your skills, because those skills are going to be super important when those top 3 skills that, you see that are like showcased, those are super important when a sort of recruiter will filter through.
Yeah, for sure. I think those are some very important tips there. Yeah, Madison, go ahead and feel free to share your advice.
Specifically with networking, I found the easiest way to find other people in the same boat as you is to put in, I know I'm still in high school, so I go through Brick Township High School alumni, and then I look into people who have gone into the sector I'm looking for. It's going to be a little bit easier for anyone in college or university because there's a larger pool there for you to look through. But connecting in that way, having that common ground of, oh, we went to the same school, we probably know some of the same teachers, we took some of the same courses, that's going to get you that little edge that some other people aren't going to have with those new recruiters.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for sharing. I know Victory has his hand raised, so if you wanted to ask any questions to the speakers.
No, he already answered my question, and let me lower my hand.
Oh, no worries, you're good. So in addition to LinkedIn and stuff, I know there's a ton of different other networking platforms. Do you guys recommend anything else? I know the networking platform that recently just came up and is like rising popularity is Clubhouse. Do you guys have any experience with that, or like any other LinkedIn, any other networking platforms, maybe like RoundPeer, or maybe even Instagram as a mode of networking? Like, I know there's some people who are literally using Tinder and Bumble. Don't do that. But yeah, there's some people who are getting connections from there. So do you recommend any other platforms besides just LinkedIn? And like, what are your experiences with those platforms? Like, anyone interested in Clubhouse? Like, does anyone network anywhere besides LinkedIn, or like other entrepreneurship platforms or things like that? Or you're mainly just LinkedIn people, or get like internships from like online? Okay, cool. Yeah, Siddharth, if you want to go ahead.
Oh yeah, I think I mentioned this before. Twitter is super, super big because there's a little bit of an sort of intimate aspect with sort of, DMing someone. I highly suggest everyone join this one community and join these communities. There's sort of these building communities for sort of people who are in Gen Z. If you are not part of Gen Z Mafia, I suggest you apply and join today because they are some of the coolest builders that are out there. They do something called community building, and there's some super, they're building crypto stuff. They're building, some of them are VCs at a very young age. And most likely, they want someone to sort of bring on and teach and mentor and shadow. And they're our age. They're literally like our own peers. So, join these discords, join these communities. That's for sure. Reach out to people that you think are really interesting. And Twitter is out there. Lots of people, especially, I don't know if anyone here is interested in VC, but it's a growing field. But lots of people who are interested in VC, they are focused on sort of connecting with these people who are at partners at these funds and reaching out to them and saying, hey, I'm a student, and you might need to be a college student, but it's good practice to understand sort of it doesn't just have to be any fund. You can just go anywhere that you want to try out. I'd suggest you follow this person, like a few tweets, keep, engaging with them, retweet a few things, and, really appreciate their content and what they're posting. And then reach out to them. Hey, I love your content. Hey, I love this. And I really, really vibe with what you're doing at X fund. Would really love if, I could get an opportunity to learn, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for sharing. Calix, if you want to go ahead and give your take on that as well.
Yeah, I really agree with what Siddharth said. Another community I would suggest specifically for those in software engineering and development is Hack Club, especially if you're a high school student. So Hack Club, they're a nonprofit meant for high school developers, and their main products is they have Hack Club Bank that sponsor a lot of nonprofits. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it. And there's also, they have their Slack community, and so I highly recommend everyone join their Slack community. It's very exclusive, so you have to apply to get in. But it's filled with really, really smart high school students. There's a lot of startups that are started there. I was recruited into one before there, not even when I asked, but people had reached out to me just because I engage with the community every once in a while. So it is a little bit intimidating, but alongside Gen Z Mafia, I highly recommend joining Hack Club. Yeah.
Yeah, Hack Club is an amazing community. Definitely recommend it. And Madison, feel free to go ahead.
As Sid mentioned earlier, Twitter is going to be your best friend. That's where I do a lot of my networking. I'd recommend making a separate business profile the same way you would have a business LinkedIn. Don't use your personal Twitter because anything on your personal Twitter they can see. It's the same thing. You wouldn't give your Instagram handle to your boss or anything like that. So try to make it very professional, have your achievements on there, update it regularly, and then introduce yourself to the alumni and the other people that you can meet on there. Because there's a lot of, I'd say hype around the tech side of Twitter, so don't be afraid to reach out, even if you think it might be out of your league or out of your wheelhouse.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for that advice. So there's a few people in the chat who actually want to know more about the platforms that you guys mentioned. So in terms of Gen Z Mafia, do you mind, Siddharth, elaborating more about it and how it actually works?
Absolutely. And I just quick, Calix, are you part of the Gen Z Mafia too?
Yeah, I'm in the community, but I don't engage with them as much as Hack Club.
Okay.
I am registered there.
Interesting. Yeah, sweet. So yeah, it's something that's really free to join essentially. I think they have a website. You can check them out on Twitter. So Gen Z Mafia is basically a big community of these builders. And these are sort of people who are either building up companies, they are sort of investing in these companies, they are trying to build something, they are learning something, they're always up to something. And I think, one thing that's out there is that it's a great way to network with people who are older than you in the Gen Z realm. Because one thing is that, and this is going to be pretty important, I guess, in the coming sort of questions, I know, knowing someone who's worked somewhere is going to be super important, especially when you're going into sort of these internship aspects, because, the moment you just, that you meet a person who's like, oh yeah, I worked at, let's say, Salonis, and then they start saying that, hey, are you interested in Salonis? I'm sure that they would love to have you. Most likely they're going to give you referrals, and obviously don't hound people. This should come naturally. Don't like fake friendships just to get these referrals. But, I would highly suggest you join Gen Z Mafia because, in case that, you don't get an internship or stuff or whatever, you're going to learn so much from the builders out there. It's going to promote you to build something, and building is super valuable, especially when you're going for any of these opportunities, whether it's in college, whether it's in real life, whether it's an internship. So highly recommend you join. I'll put the link in the chat really shortly.
Yeah, for sure. Really great explanation of that platform. I know some people wanted more of like an elaboration on Hack Club a little bit. So Calix, if you wanted to talk more about your experiences, some maybe channels to join or some things that you learned from your time in that Slack community.
Yeah. So with Hack Club, I know they don't really do it much anymore, but they used to hold a lot of events. They used to hold a lot of AMAs. So like some of their famous AMAs, they did AMAs with Elon Musk. They did AMAs with CEO of Figma, COO of SpaceX, and they used to do a lot of those, and a lot of because they have so many connections. Their founder is really out there. He has a lot of connections with different people, as well as the people on their staff. But other than that, if you join their community, they have like thousands of channels. They have channels about shipping. So ship in Hack Club basically means to ship out your product or ship out your project. So there are people who there's at least 5 to 15 projects put in there every single day. And, some of them are like, kind of dumb projects. Some of them are really cool projects. I know this one guy, he created an AI program to generate anime music. And so there's a lot of cool things there. And every once in a while, someone will take their ideas, turn into a startup, and they'll recruit people from their Hack Club network. So I definitely think that, and it's also really great for tech support if you have any issues with anything. But yeah, I highly recommend joining. And even if you're not going to ship out any projects there, it's really great to know the people there just because they're really awesome and they're all international.
That's really awesome. Really great explanation of the community. So another question that someone else had, Rosie asked, how do you start a conversation with an alumni? Let's just say on LinkedIn, if you wanted to network with someone new, maybe at your college, like an alumni, or maybe someone who works at a company that you're interested in, like they could just work at it, maybe they're not a recruiter. How do you actually introduce yourself to new people on virtual communities like these? Do you have experience with like networking and just like reaching out, making personalized invites to new people? Like how do you actually make new connections and stuff like that? Yeah, feel free to give your insights on that, Kaylee.
Yeah, for sure. So definitely did a lot of like networking in college and in high school, reaching out to alumni, reaching out to just like professionals who interest me. One, I would say that first initial like coffee chat invite / first initial reach out really has to be strong. It really has to be personalized. Make sure you're doing your research as to why you're engaging with this professional, what interests you about them. Set some goals for what you want to get out of a conversation with them. So whether it be learning about what they did to get up to where they are now, if you want to learn about like more their professional side versus like their work ethic mentality, stuff like that. Creating a list of very personalized questions, not just having the same like list of questions for every single person you meet. And of course, being like very gracious of their time. Of course, they're very busy, so being very thankful, very I'm forgetting the word, very like efficient with time. So not saying like, oh, can I take an hour of your time? Maybe starting off like, hey, can I talk to you for 15 minutes of your time? Because they are busy and they'll appreciate that. And then sending afterwards a follow-up note is always really great. Like, here's what I learned. Thank you so much for your time. Looking forward to connecting in the future or staying in touch, stuff like that. You always want to keep that door open, and reaching back out is a great way to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for the tips. Yeah, Siddharth, feel free to go ahead.
As much as I hate to agree with the Stanford person, I'm going to have to say that, she hit it out of the park. Yes, that's 100% right. One thing that's also there, when you're reaching out, it's the same exact strategy I was mentioning with sort of Twitter. You connect with them. Don't have like an immediate ask. You can obviously, like their content and, sort of, they'll usually be making frequent posts. One thing that's there is that, flex your school. And I'm seeing a few questions here that sort of like talk about, I don't know, like, what is it? The tasks of high schoolers, interns at relatively big companies like consulting, banking, and tech. So traditionally, high school alum, that's a little bit more hard to come by. I think Madison might be able to sort of talk about that more, but with college alum, you are going to have a much, much easier time because, there's a little bit more of sort of pride with, the college name. So, like, for example, we have the elite mascot, sorry, Stanford, the Bears. So, when you introduce yourself, you like to a sort of alum, you're like, hey, what's up? I'm from Berkeley, go Bears. And then, you just show that you're enthusiastic because, alum always like to see enthusiastic kids who are willing to grow and learn. And the moment you start reaching out to them with enthusiasm and really start connecting with them, especially, doing and starting this hustle really young, they're going to like that and appreciate it a lot. And if you look at these sort of companies and industries that these alum are working at, and I'm sure everyone here is going to go to great colleges, and you can just see that there's a tremendous amount of networking that's done, and that's really going to be accomplished a lot by being enthusiastic, and being also don't be afraid to flex the school name. But yeah, I think that's definitely sort of my input with that.
Yeah, thank you so much for the amazing advice. Madison, feel free to give your take on that as well.
I completely agree. It's going to be a lot easier to connect with them when it's a college because people do have a lot more pride in their college because it's almost like they got to choose where they went to college. It's not like, oh, I was put in this high school and that's, where I went. So when you're reaching out for alumni from high schools, it's important to look at their whole profile and see if there's any other common ground you can cover, especially if they're only a couple years out of the high school. If they're just getting out of college, they're a little bit past that point. Maybe you reach out to a couple teachers. You say, hey, did you ever know this person? What were they into? Anything like that? And they say, oh yeah, they were on the football team or they were head of this club and you're in that club. So now you have a little bit more footing to go into. Hey, I'm Madison, I'm from Brick, and I'm also part of this club. We do this and this, and I was helping to get your insight on XYZ. It's going to be all about finding that common ground because if you don't have that, they're not going to really remember you as much as other people.
Yeah, thank you so much for your insights on that. I guess we can like wrap it up with like one more question just for everyone here. What's the favorite part about your internship or your job that you're currently working at, and what are the tasks and what's kind of like the mindset of like balancing that with high school or college and stuff like that? So just like any just last tips that you learned from working at your internship or your favorite parts and stuff like that. Yeah, Madison, feel free to go ahead.
You're going to meet so many new people as part of your internship. Personally, for my NASA internship in specific, I was working with a group of 5 kids, but we were part of another subgroup of about 30 kids. And I still keep in touch with almost all of them today. And they're going to be great resources for your future as well. Those are new connections that you're making. So not only are you making new friends, you could be in different time zones, you are going for different opportunities, and that's going to help you in the future when you're now in a new state, you're looking for a new opportunity, and you already have 2-3 friends there.
Yeah, that's some really awesome insights. Smitty, if you want to share your experiences.
Yeah, I think Madison said it perfectly. Meeting new people, you're going to develop such a huge network with whatever experiences you decide to do, and keeping in touch with those with that network is extremely valuable as you go forward in your career. And I think the other thing that I really love about experiencing, not necessarily just private equity or banking, but my other experiences as well, is that you learn what you're passionate about. Every single experience that you have, you get closer and closer to figuring out, this is what I love and this is what I want to do. And I think that is very rewarding. So.
That's so awesome to hear. And last but not least, Calix, if you wanted to just share your experiences as well.
Yeah, I think for me, it would actually be the experience. And I say that just because depending on what part of the team you're on or what your role is, sometimes you're going to have a very independent role. So for me at Hack Plus, I work pretty independently in terms of I don't collaborate with other developers on different tasks. I mainly just communicate with the engineering lead. But having the experience of working on a project that's a lot bigger than any project you could personally work on is really, really helpful for learning. The software that Hack Plus uses is used by a lot of different people. And I mean, at least specifically for development, like, you know, having a project that's so scaled up like that is so much different from if 5 to 6 people are using whatever you're making, just because you have to take in a lot of info and a lot of things into account. Like you can't push out bad code, especially if it's dealing with finances or legal data, which Hack Plus is. So yeah, I mean, learning those kinds of things in a different environment is really helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your insights and experiences and stuff like that. So we're going to wrap this up a little bit early just to sort out a few things. But before we wrap everything up and announce our social media winners, we're just going to take a few fun pictures. So if you guys can just turn on those cameras so we can see your faces, if you want to be featured on our social media, and we're going to do some nice pictures, and then I'll do a cool video where we're just like all waving to a cool song. Oh my God, love that background, Sidar. I know Melinda also suggested that we should do kind of like a BEAMathon background. I'll get those set up maybe for the next weekend or tomorrow. So yeah, turn your cameras. Y'all want some prizes? Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Okay. We should do a thing. Like, I know that at some colleges they have that like midnight scream before like the finals or something. We should do like something dedicated to the closing ceremony. We're just all screaming in the thing. We'll see. Okay, let's see. More people turn on those cameras. We almost got that full screen. Yeah, if anyone has any more questions, I know some of the speakers are dropping their email or their social media handles like Instagram and stuff like that. Oh my God, I love those backgrounds. Okay, let's see how many more people. All right. So yeah, I guess since we got a full camera, full screen of people with their cameras on and stuff like that. Yeah, look at them, plug in their socials, plug in their emails. Perfect. All right, so let's all do like a heart. You just look nice and unified right there. So, oh my God, I see someone doing the BTS heart. Is that the BTS? I don't even know what it is. Is the K-pop heart? I don't know. Okay, but yeah, that's really cool. So I'm going to take a picture in 3, 2, 1. Cute. Okay, so now let's all do a peace sign. All right, here we go. I know it's very basic. I don't have any other ideas. If you guys have any other ideas, please let me know because I keep on doing the same pose. Okay, so ready? 3, 2, 1. Awesome. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna do this quick thing where I turn on a little bit of music, and then when I tell you guys to wave, just wave so I can post this video on the Beam Instagram story. Let's see. Let's see what song. Give me a second. I really, do you guys want to be rickrolled? I don't know. Okay, let me check. Okay, sure. I'm gonna rickroll everyone here. I always do this. I'm going to do the Rick Astley song.
You should
So,
all us.
oh, I told you guys, so it's not rickrolling. Oops. Okay, hold on. 1 second. 1 second. Okay, wait. Okay, hold on. 3, 2, 1. Hey, landing internships and jobs. They're rickrolled, kind of. I told them in advance, but look at these people. Oh my God, period. Thank you guys for coming. I have to keep on doing that. Every time I rickroll someone, I always tell them before. Like, that's not how you do it. Okay, before we just end this off, I'm just going to quickly introduce our social media competition winner. There weren't actually many people who entered, so keep that in mind. There is actually not many people who have been doing it for some workshops, so you might auto win. So feel free to drum roll, please, or just me. I don't know. All right, I'm gonna do a solo drum roll. And 3, 2, 1. Everyone hype in the chat for Flowers for Victory.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, congratulations for winning those stickers and stuff. Going to send those to you after the BEAMathon, give some hype. And hold on, before we end this off, let me just share my entire screen so I can like play the music and just do a cute little outro. Sure, just hold on. All right. See you guys. Bye. Thank you for coming. You can go. Bye now.
I'm gonna be emailing you soon, Siddharth. Bye.
Bye. All right, I'm gonna end this right now. All right, see you guys. I'm gonna just end this and I'll see you in the next shop.